At a young age, my parents had split up, and seeing all that kind of basically ruined my upbringing in the sense of having a father figure around. So the thing with me being brought up in that kind of setting was before they actually split, they were churchgoers and things like that. So they would do Sunday school teaching and everything like this and read the Bible. One thing that turned me off God was the fact that they would say one thing but live another. Their lifestyle wasn't actually adding up to what they were talking about in church and everything like this. So by the time my parents split up, my dad had left and left my mum to raise 7 kids on her own. And seeing my mum try and commit suicide in front of me was quite, at a young age, being the age of 9, was quite daunting to see. And I remember just seeing her laying there just hopeless, and like it was almost like no life in her. I remember just thinking, you know what, nobody's ever going to hurt my mum like that again, or even my siblings. And without realising it, I became this person that would get really annoyed or really ticked when someone would say something really mean about my siblings or anything like this. Through time, I became quite bitter and quite reserved towards people. I wouldn't allow people to get to know me or get too close to me. And I had a lot of pride. Although my pride wasn't sounding like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like the drama, but my pride was something that actually, unfortunately, gave me a reputation back at home, which was someone to not mess around with. Unfortunately, in school, I had no friends because people were just were too afraid to even come and say hello, or when I would walk down the streets, they would cross the road and just didn't want anything to do with me. And all my friends actually were my family, my cousins. And by this stage, I was in my teens. I was 15 at the time, and by then it was like I just wanted someone to get to know who I really am, who the person was inside. But because of pride, I wouldn't admit that I was in my lowest points as well. And with such pride and arrogance, I became quite violent towards my siblings. I would boss them around and do a lot of things. And it came to the point where I was joking with one of my siblings, and I didn't find her, well, I said a joke and then she was like, oh yeah, that's not funny. And me and my pride was like, you don't say that. So I got annoyed that she actually said that. And my mum was going out that night, and I remember turning to her and saying, you know what, tonight's going to be your last night. And for everybody else, you probably think, oh yeah, that's just words. But because of my reputation, she believed it. And so I just remember looking at her and just saying, tonight is your last night. And she was starting to cry, and to the point where she was begging me to take these words back. And it wasn't until she just dropped to her knees and just yelling at the top of her lungs and starting to crawl on her hands and knees, coming up to me and yanking on my top, that when I saw the fear in her eyes, I realised, what the heck have I become? I've just gone too far. And before, I just didn't know how far I had gone until that moment. And just looking down at her and just seeing her just cry and beg for her life, to take me, to take those words back, I couldn't handle it. It's almost like I was just, in her eyes, I was seeing the devil and not me, not her sister. So with that, I actually just ran out of the house, and I remember just running and just kept running and going to one of our local parks And I remember just yelling at God, like, who have I become? You know, what is this? If this is all that I'm supposed to be, you know, take me now. I don't want to live like this. I don't want this reputation. I want people to see who I really am, the person that's screaming out. And I would love to say that things changed straight away, but it didn't. But when I did yell out to God, I really did feel His hand upon me, and it was just so unexplainable. I've never had a touch from God before. And weeks had gone by, and I was invited to go to a church service, and I went there again with pride. I had gone through a couple of services, sitting out the back, arms folded, and trying to look staunch. And then one of the pastors was doing the old school, and he was talking about the love of God and how Jesus died on the cross to pay for our sins. And again, as I mentioned before, my parents were Sunday school teachers, so they had already said things like that. So to me, it was like, yeah, whatever. And then it wasn't until he said something that was not even related to his sermon. He said, God is the father to the fatherless. And when I heard that, that really broke me to the point of I was a mess. And I believe that it was then that I actually allowed my heart to be opened. And God really met me there. And that was when I was 15, that I gave my life to Jesus. And I've been serving God for 15 years now. Moved over here, and I tell you what, God is the best thing that I've ever experienced. He's never let me down. He's given me hope. I have a future in God. And the greatest thing about being a Christian, a born-again Christian, is that you can actually tell people about the gospel, and that you can actually see a change in their hearts, just like Jesus touched my heart. And it was that night at that service that I bowed my knee, asked Jesus Christ to forgive me of my sin, and I was very genuine. For the first time, I was genuine in my decision, and I've lived for God ever since. And I know that heaven is my home. You can sleep at night knowing that if anything was to happen, you can stand before God, and you know that God will welcome you into heaven. So if you are here and you're wondering and you're basically haven't experienced the love of God, I encourage you, you would have an opportunity tonight. Jesus is the answer. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And I like how my pastor says, you can know that you know that you know that you are saved, and you can have that assurance of salvation. Thank you.